Good evening. Welcome to Vibin with Ashley Live. I'm your host, Ashley Live. This is episode 238 of my show. So excited for tonight's guest. It's the one, the only Dave Frisina, veteran radio professional with over 40 years of experience. Best known for his long tenure at 95X in Syracuse, where he created the iconic local music show Soundcheck. He has held leadership roles and on air roles at several stations, including TK99, The Rebel, Westwood One, and continues to independently stream his show, Soulshine. A 1994 inductee into the Syracuse Area Music Hall of Fame, Dave has received numerous accolades, including the Sammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Dave is in the house, so let's get this party started.
Hi,
Dave, how
Ashley.
are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me on my show. I'm so very excited to have you. I mean, I feel like with your career in this business, there is so much that we need to cover tonight.
I've got the time. I'm retired.
You got the time, I got the time. So let's just kick it off. So you've been in radio for over 4 decades. What originally drew you to it?
Um, well, let's see. I guess I started listening to radio on a transistor radio when I was living on Long Island, and
Yep.
listened to WABC out of New York City, and then eventually started listening to FM stations like WNEW and WLIR, WPLR out of New Haven.
Hmm.
But when I got to college, to Cortland State, um, first year I was there, somebody that I met happened to know someone else who was working at the college radio station, and they took me up there one time. And from there, friendships developed, and I started doing radio. I never thought that that was even a possibility. And when I graduated in '77, I hung around as kind of like a faculty, non-faculty advisor. And then, as it turns out, the following year, in 1978, right up the road, up 81 from Cortland, in Syracuse, 95X was signing on as a brand new station, and they hired me, fortunately, to do weekends and overnights, and eventually one thing led to another.
Yeah. And that's how it all came to play. So okay, so someone brought you to the radio station, and what do you think it was about radio that drew you in?
I was into music from the time I was very young. My mom used to listen to all kinds of musicals. My dad was into Al Hurt and Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass, and I ended up playing trumpet, which ended up going into baritone horn. I was in symphonic wind ensemble. I was in jazz band, marching band. I played at Lincoln Center. I was very
Cool.
musically oriented, and I think that when I got to college, I ran into a group of people that loved music as well as much as I did, including popular music. And when they gave me the opportunity to be on the radio, which I thought was never even a possibility,
Hmm.
that just developed another skill. Being able to find music that I like and put it together in such a way that other people would like it as well.
Hmm. Hmm. So what do you think has kept you inspired for all these years?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I love music. Um, I love discovering new music and finding older music that is compatible with, showing people that, that love music from the 70s, 60s, and 70s, that there's really great artists out there now that maybe they're not exposed to, or maybe they don't have the time to find. And so that
Hmm.
I do that for them. I like when I think it's a common connection for a lot of people, and it brings people together. And so if I can be a part of that, I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah. So in 1979, you created Soundcheck, a local music show that became a staple in Syracuse. So what impact do you think that show had on the local music scene?
Um, I think everything creates ripples. The movies where you go back in time, you don't want to kill a butterfly because the butterfly effect. Um, I started that in 1979 because I was doing overnights at the time, and so I would go out to clubs and see bands, and then have to pull a Cinderella and go back to the radio station and do the overnight shift. And so
Oh,
I
wow.
got to see a lot of bands and meet bands, and then I figured, well, some of these bands are so good that I want to play them on the radio. And back then, the radio was a little bit more freewheeling. It wasn't as structured.
Hmm.
It wasn't that we didn't have consultants and we didn't have people telling us we got to do music testing, and we would just play good music. And there was a lot of good music. There just wasn't a lot of product yet back
Yeah.
in the late 70s. Not a lot of people had vinyl records, local recorded. It was hard to make a local recording of that. So I was playing even cassettes on the air. And, it got to the point where by the 90s, the Sammys started, the Syracuse Area Music Awards, to then award bands and give them recognition for their efforts in recording music. And over time, it got to the point where, I mean, Syracuse is a hotbed of music. It's just incredible, the variety of music. This year alone, I think the last few years, when they look for people to participate in the Sammys, they get over 100 recordings
Yeah.
from bands that have recorded just in that particular calendar year.
Hmm.
And I've gotten albums and music from people who said, "You used to play my dad's music on the radio."
Oh, that's so.
So I think that there is a ripple effect that it gave people an opportunity to not only play out in clubs and in front of people, but to get their music heard in a variety of different places that they wouldn't have had access to otherwise. And so, yeah, I think in every little bit helps. The music scene get more recognition and more confidence, and those things just lead to better and better things.
Hmm. And I think as a musician, right, as a local musician, there is something about hearing yourself on the radio that is life changing, right?
Yeah, I've had that conversation with people before. It's one thing to hear it in the mixing studio,
Hmm.
and it's one thing to play it for your friends, but when you're sitting in a car or you're sitting in the back porch or you're sitting next to your stereo and all of a sudden your song comes on, there's
Hmm.
something about that. There's something about the fact that there's a community all sharing that moment in that time, and they're hearing something that you put together, that you constructed. And I think, there is something to that, and that's why I continue to do what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to have more and more platforms in order to be able to do that.
Hmm. And that's so powerful because it speaks volumes as who you are as a person and as a radio professional that you have continued to do this for all these years.
I don't know how to do anything else really. So,
You got to do what you love because when you do what you love, it's not considered work, right? Like it's not working.
yeah, except when I was doing 7 days a week, 8 shows a week, programming music,
Wow.
scheduling music, editing music. It got to be, there were days where I loved what I was doing, but it just became, it was just a little overwhelming at times. And now that I am retired and I get to do, one show a week, I think I can do more than that if I had to, but I really enjoy being able to put my time and effort into finding music and then putting it together and being able to be creative at least once a week. It's just it's given me a whole new reason to be excited about what I do.
Yeah, because I feel like what you said about working 7, 8 days a week, around the clock, programming stuff like that, you're doing all this stuff, right? You go from doing it all day, every day to just doing it that one day a week. So that's got to be different as well, right? Because you feel like, oh my gosh, I got to do this and this and this. And there's not enough time of the day to do everything you need to do, right? But now, because it's just that one day a week, it's more curated. You can really take your time and put all that passion from those 8 days a week to just, the Sunday show.
Yeah, I think that I'm not comparing myself to working musicians in any way, but I think that if you were to ask one, would you rather play 7 days a week or once a week? I think a lot of them, except for maybe especially if you were doing it for free, um, I think most of them would rather play a show once a week than 7 days a week.
Oh,
So, but I could be wrong. Everybody's different. It depends on how long you've been doing it too. Um, I was lucky to be able to remain employed for over 40 years with very little downtime.
hmm.
And so I enjoyed all the different changes that took place in that time. But it did get, when it gets to be a job, it's less fun than when it's not a job. When it's being creative, you
Yeah.
know.
Hmm. So do you feel like your creativity was kind of like stunted being at these radio stations a little bit?
I think it was just stretched.
Yeah.
It's just stretched. There's only so much. you know, that you can talk about every day for 4 hours. You know, I don't have anybody writing cue cards for me. I mean, it's 4 hours a day, and you got to come up with stuff to say. And one thing that I really tried to avoid, and I really didn't enjoy, was people that just lean, DJs that unfortunately just lean on, generic prep sheets. Everything's a joke. Everything's a, here's some wacky news today. I'm like, I like talking about music. I like talking about events, about things I've gone to, about impressions of things I've seen, and how that relates to other people. And I like lyrics in songs. I like the music aspect of it. I like the old school DJ aspect of it, rather than, being like a performing court jester type of thing.
Yeah, and I think even like nowadays when you listen to radio, like you can hear when it sounds scripted or when it sounds like too rehearsed. It doesn't sound natural. Like when you said, "Oh, you got to do a joke every break." Like some people aren't funny though. You know what I mean?
That's true. I mean, but the thing is, nowadays radio has changed because in so many places, in so many markets, it's not profitable to have live DJs on the air. I mean, when I started, I was doing overnights. Literally, I dare you to find a live overnight DJ now.
No.
But I mean, even for most radio stations, it's hard to find, outside of maybe morning drive, that you find a lot of live bodies in the building. It's people voice tracking. I've done it. And you can develop a talent for it. I did it at one point. I was on 95X, and I was also on I-100 in Cortland at the same time. But the fact is that the markets overlap. So when I was on the station in Cortland, I had to go under a different name, which is like Clark Kent wearing a pair of glasses. I mean, it was Dave Frisina and Dave Stone. And I mean, I'm on the air at the same time in two different markets. But if you had a good radio, you could pick up both.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing when I was at TK99. I was also on WOUR, which I loved being on WOUR. It's a classic FM station in upstate New York. But I would literally be on the air live in one and voice tracked on the other at the same time, doing two different shows.
Yeah.
So, and then the extreme example of that, as you mentioned at the top of the show, is when I was doing Westwood One satellite network. I had 4 computer screens in the studio. 2 of them were from Westwood One, and one was for the Rebel.
Mm-hmm.
All 3, it was 3 different shows going on at the same time. And I had to do breaks for 3. It was like juggling plates for 4 hours and always coming up with something to say. So that was a challenge.
I can only, because even just doing one show was a lot, but you have 3 different shows. You're like, oh, I have to make sure I say, the right station name for this one.
Right. And one of the Westwood ones was generic. So it was going out to stations. So I didn't mention any call letters at all or any promotions. And then there was another one where they gave me some localized content. There was like one station in Paris, Texas, one in Pocatello, Idaho, one in Presque Isle, Maine. And so every once in a while I'd have to do station promotions for those particular stations. So sometimes I'd have to do the same break 4 or 5 times for different stations.
Wow.
While I was still on the air live with the Rebel. So it was, but again, it was a part of the learning process. It was fun to try and do for a while.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So we just kind of touched on this, but how do you think radio has changed the most since you started in 95X in 1978? Like, I feel like there's so much to talk about on how it has changed. About it.
Well, it was so much more freeform back there. It was the kind of radio station that people talk about now, and it's what it's known like old school FM radio. We would go in and there would be 2 turntables and a microphone and a cart deck for commercials that looked like 8 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be playing. It was a whole different skill set. You had to be able to have 2 turntables and start one while the other one was fading out, being able to fade in and fade out, doing segues, and flip starting albums that, which meant you'd put your thumb on the record while it was spinning and try to make sure that there was a smooth transition. It was a whole different skill set, and you had to choose music. You'd have a wall of albums, and you'd have a format sheet which said you'd have play a blue record, a red record, a green record, and all those meant different things. Yeah. Red was a single, blue was an album cut, green was a deep album cut. And then you had currents and recurrents. So you had all this terminology and all these different things that DJs had to make a choice
Mm-hmm.
based on what the format was. So you'd have the radio station would be a radio station in general with the same music, but you'd have different DJs inflecting different tastes of music. That's all changed. That's
Yeah.
all gone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some non-commercial stations where you can still do that. There are some specialty shows where you can do that. But for the most part, it's all spit out on a computer. And I've been in that position where you program a computer to play a 90s song, an 80s song, a 70s song, and then a current. And then you program that in, you tell the computer, here's the songs you have to work with. It spits them all out for 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the program director or music director goes in and edits them to make sure that tempo wise and that that they fit together, that there's a certain sensibility about it. But then the DJs are just handed this list and said, now here's what you have. Now you get to talk about it. In one way, that's really good because you don't have to think about what you're going to play next. You don't have to worry about that. You have
Right.
more time to think about what's coming up. You can see what's coming up. You have ideas of how you can talk about what's coming up or how you can pre-sell and pre-promote that. So in some ways, it's made your job easier to come up with content. In other ways, it's made people lazier, and they don't have that sense of creating something. So I mean, that's how basically things have changed. It went from hands-on experience to you're basically one piece of a machine that's already been programmed in.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when you think about like a generic radio station, nowadays you hear the same 15 to 20 songs. I mean, that's it.
When I started the Rebel, they handed me the company list of, like, I don't know, was it 300 or 400 classic rock songs that all tested well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, that's a good start. That'll get me through a couple of days. But I mean, realistically, by the time I left there, it was more in the thousands, couple thousand. It wasn't 400. So
Yeah.
again, I don't want to play unfamiliar music. I want to turn people on to songs that people that grew up listening to classic rock grew up listening to albums, and albums have more than one song on them. And nobody that I know used to play one song on an album and then pick up another album and play one song on an album. I mean, you'd listen to album sides. You may have a favorite side, but you'd listen to whole sides of albums.
Yeah.
So people were familiar with more songs than just the singles. And so, when you're able to somehow combine that ability to play deeper tracks in addition to popular tracks and then turn people on to new songs, that just broadens the horizon. It makes it more interesting. Again, that's me and a lot of my friends.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you said deep tracks, and I was like, I mean, I feel like the deeper tracks, I mean, yes, we all know certain songs, the popular ones, but the deep tracks are some of the best.
Well, I mean, so the problem is that the more popular songs are, I mean, there's a lot of ways they became popular.
Mm-hmm.
Some because of merit, some because of money, and who you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you're trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator. Like, what does everyone like? And you're like, well, maybe we're on different levels. Maybe we all have different levels.
Right.
Maybe some of us appreciate more music than other people. So if all we're doing is appealing to the most common basic people, then you're leaving out people that say, yeah, but what about this? What about that?
Mm-hmm.
And I like something that, so some listening tests will be like, they'll get 100 people in a room and play 7 seconds of a song and they rate it 7 seconds. There's a lot of songs that I love that in 7 seconds, it doesn't spell out much about the song. It
Right.
really doesn't. And so, and for people that don't listen a lot, they might not know it at all. So then that song falls off the playlist. Yeah. It's like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. And again, from a radio standpoint, from a business standpoint, you want to appeal to the most people that you can, not just the people that really love music. But then along the way, the problem is the people that really love music start listening less and less and finding other ways to find music. And nowadays, there are a gajillion ways to find music. So
Mhm.
You know, if a station's fallback is playing, you know, their favorite 200 songs, and it just it appeals to a crowd of people that want to hear those 200 songs.
Yeah. Hmm. So you held both on-air talent as well as leadership roles. And you kind of touched on this earlier, but what are the biggest differences between managing a station and then being behind the mic as a personality?
um, well, you're responsible for a lot more than just your own show. When you're doing your own show, you're responsible for doing what you do, and that's it,
Yeah.
for the most part. And you hopefully will concentrate on that.
Hmm.
When you're managing a whole station, you have to figure out more of the dynamics of trying to make the station sound cohesive, but still have, you know, some individuality within certain day parts. You want, you know, you want consistency, but you want it to be spontaneous. There's always these opposites that go up against each other.
Hmm.
Uh, you're just juggling more things. You're responsible for more things, and you know you're in charge of the sound of the station, and that may be the promos that you run, the sweepers in between songs, um, and the overall sound of the station. Um, you know that you're so that people know if they hear 2 or 3 songs in a row what station they're listening to.
Hmm.
You're responsible for that, and sometimes you have to do it yourself. I had a sign up in my studio that just said DIY because in a lot of times the stations get smaller and smaller, and staffs get smaller and smaller. Fewer and fewer people have to do all the work. But when you have the opportunity and you have talented people, then you can assign those people that have the best skill set for any particular thing to do that particular thing. And sometimes you're lucky and you get people that are, somebody may be really good at promotions and somebody may be really good at doing production. Somebody may, so it's great when you have those abilities. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't.
Hmm. Hmm. And then being the personality, is it just like coming up with content and just really, trying to make it really engaging for the listener?
Yeah. I want real people. I
Yeah.
would tell people, look, when we started the Rebel and they gave me the opportunity to actually be totally in charge, they said, I'm not looking for, they said, well, what format? How do I come in and out of music? What do you want me to say? And I'm like, I don't want you to say anything. I want you to be yourself. I chose you, the people that I chose to be on the air, I chose because I trust how you communicate with people. I want you to communicate. I want you to be a natural person, like you're talking to somebody. Talk one-on-one to people because they can hear. If I'm talking into a microphone and it's coming out, they're hearing just me talking to them. I don't want to be talking to everybody. I want to talk to one person. I want to imagine one person, and I don't want to be a carnival barker.
Yeah.
I want to be somebody that's talking to them like I'm in a party, or that we're just sitting on the back deck having a sweet tea, as we do down south. And so, there are certain formatics that we try to establish, how we identify the station, but it doesn't have to be the same all the time. I
Hmm.
heard this one story about a really famous DJ who he said, look, I can come in and out of the same song 10 different ways. I'm
Yeah.
not going to do it at the same time all the time. I want to get, I want to be, especially if you're on a station, you're playing similar music that rotates all the time. You want different ways to come in and out of that. And sometimes it's identifying lyrics in the song or where you heard the song or the song title. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. I don't want to hear somebody do it the same way all the time. That's
Yeah.
just,
It's robotic and it's not fun. It just makes you think like that person does not have a personality.
well, and I've heard DJs that'll just come out of it with like 95X, the home of rock and roll, and here's music, and they say the same thing over and over and over, and I'm like, it sounds like you don't even care that the call letters don't even matter to you. That it's just something you're forced to do. I
Yeah.
don't want you to be forced to do anything. I want you to people to identify you with the station, with the music. However you do that, use your personality to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to just bring your personality out because each individual personality was hired for a reason. And it's not just to say 95X, home of rock and roll, here's Led Zeppelin. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly what you mean.
You're just like, please just give me something more. You got to keep it engaging.
I can, from over 200 shows you've done.
Yeah.
Some people are easier to talk to than others. Some people are engaging. You can go into a room with 20 people you don't know, and within 20 minutes, you know who the conversationalists are.
Right.
Those kinds of people do well on radio because they're talking to people one-on-one. They're used to communicating with people. That's the kind of person that I like listening to on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So, when it came down to it, that's the kind of person that I wanted on the station that I was running,
Yeah, definitely. So tell us about Soul Shine. What inspired you to create the show?
Well, I grew up listening to progressive FM radio, listening to WNEW, listen to Allison Steele, the Nightbird, late nights on WNEW with a voice that would melt a teenage boy's heart. But playing music that was interesting and mind opening, and the way that things would mix together, old and new, and different styles of music, combining different styles of music. So anyway, I wanted to go kind of an old school progressive sound.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of artists. So for example, really quick, the kind of music that I grew up on and I really liked was called AOR,
Mm-hmm.
album oriented rock. It doesn't exist anymore. It's splintered off into classic rock, alternative, top 40, country, but there's no AOR. AOR meant that you would play something from the Stones, and then you'd play something new from maybe Soul Asylum, and then you'd play something like Pink Floyd, but then you'd play something. There was a flow, but it was different. You'd play old and new mixed. Nowadays, classic rock. I mean, who's going to play the new? There's a Springsteen box set coming out of numerous albums that were recorded like in the 70s and 80s. It's coming out June 27th. No
Mm-hmm.
classic rock stations are really going to play that for more than maybe the blink of an eye.
Right.
Van Morrison's probably put out 15 albums since classic rock radio paid any attention to them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's artists that are well known in the format that nobody's playing. There's people like John Prine and Bonnie Raitt and Jason Isbell that come out with great albums. Most of these stations won't play them.
Yeah.
So the stations that do play them are basically either non-commercial or AAA, adult album alternative.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, Soulshine was a AAA station. It was playing artists like Tedeschi Trucks and the Wood Brothers and so many other bands that can sell out venues that nobody else was playing in town. Nobody was playing Lake Street Dive. Nobody's playing. There's so many of these bands out there that are adults like listening to, and other people, like, not just adults, people will go to their shows, but there were no radio stations that represented their music.
Yeah.
So once a week, I was able to put together a show where I could mix, something from Quicksilver Messenger Service into something that came out last week and put it all together, give it some compatibility, give it a flow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the inspiration of the show was. It took me a while to come up with the name because a lot of the names of the kinds of shows that I wanted to do had already been taken.
Right.
And then stumbled upon me that one of the bands that I've seen the most over the last 40 years was the Allman Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
I met Warren Haynes right after he joined the Allman Brothers around the Seven Turns tour at the War Memorial. And shortly afterwards, he came out with the song Soul Shine. And I'm like listening to the lyrics of that. And it was one of my favorite bands. It just made sense that would be the name of the show.
Yeah.
And that was in 2012. And the show has run consistently since then. Now I'm streaming it on my own. It's on a couple different platforms, on Live 365, which is an app which you can even listen to on your TV, on your smart TV.
Amazing.
It's also on something called mixcloud.com, which is where I archive all of my shows. I've got, since I started doing it, probably 150 shows on there.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, which is really exciting, I found a station in Florida where I live now
Mm-hmm.
that is going to start playing my show on Sundays as well. It's Radio St. Pete down in St. Petersburg. And the station that had immediately attracted me to it was that it said Radio St. Pete, where local music matters. I'm like, oh my God.
That's you.
Are you kidding me? I kind of like local music, and so after meeting the music director there and the owner, yeah, we're going to start putting my show Soulshine on their station on Sundays as well. So it's just one more platform and one more group of musicians that I get to turn up people onto that may not have heard of a lot of the bands from South Florida, from the Tampa Bay, St. Pete area. So again, it's just it's one more step of doing what I like to do and being able to get away with it.
So talk to me, like, how are you finding these artists? Like, I know you go to a lot of shows, but are there places like online you're looking, or certain musicians reaching out to you? Talk to us about that.
A lot of it is referrals, and I have friends and family that send me links all the time. My sons will send me links. Friends of mine will send me links. Um, Sometimes I'll even reach out to some musicians. I have some friends, some musicians that I've met in the Tampa Bay area. Then I reached out to them going, give me a list of 10 of your favorite local bands so that I can look into them. And then I'll find what I find. And sometimes you go down that rabbit hole where you're listening to one song on a music service like a Spotify or a Tidal, and that leads you to another, or you're on YouTube like we are now, and you hit one music video and it shows a bunch on the right that you might want to check out. You do, and then pretty soon you're four deep into some place you never thought you'd be, you know? So, and sometimes I'll find a song by watching a TV show and it pops up on there, or a movie, and I'll say, let me see what else I can find out about this artist. And so there's so many different ways. I just keep my ears open all the time, and I use Facebook and these social media platforms for music as much as anything, and to stay in touch with my friends and family up north.
How do you feel about Shazam?
I think it's great to be able to use. I don't use it that much. A lot of times, if I hear a song, if I don't recognize it, I will memorize one line of the song, and I'll type it into Google, and I'll find it like that.
Really cool. Like if you're at the store, right, and you're like, well, okay, maybe not you, because I feel like you know tons of music, but like maybe you're in a grocery store and you hear a song and you're like, oh, what is this? And then you just Shazam it, and it's just like, oh, boom, it was this. You know?
No, it's great to be able to do that, and I have some people that do that with my show because they can't wait for me to recap. So I'll have a 4-song set, and before I get to recap what I just played, they'll Shazam it because they want to buy it, and I think that's the best thing I can possibly hear when I do a show and I get feedback on Facebook, because it's a kind of when it runs live, people can comment on the show, and so when I hear somebody say, who was that? I want to look them up, or I just bought that album because I heard it on your show. That is the best thing that I could possibly hear. That's when radio or what I'm doing works, is when you're turning people on to music because it's something that you hope that they'll appreciate. And when you do, maybe they'll tell somebody else. It's like the whole Johnny Appleseed thing, and that makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, tell a friend to tell a friend. And yeah, it's like the biggest compliment for you, because you're just like, I love this so much. I'm so happy that I can introduce you to this artist just based off of my show.
Exactly. It's like making a mixtape for friends every week, and then they pass it along to other people. And if I can find somebody, or if I run into somebody, I'll say the first thing is like, what kind of music do you like? And then I can narrow it down, and we can talk about things that they like or dislike, and if we happen to have a lot of things in common, I'll say, look, there's a show every week that you might like. So, I'll take my listeners one at a time, because I know that a lot of the times when somebody that I've identified as somebody that likes music, when they listen to the show once, they'll listen again.
Yeah.
I don't have to drag them along with me. I think they'll, I've told people, if you listen for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you'll get a really good idea of what to expect from this 3-hour show. And there's a lot of people, to my surprise, and that will tune in 10 a.m. Sunday morning. If it's 2 minutes late, they'll message me, what's going on? And they'll stay through until the absolute end. And they'll even recap with me and tell me what songs they liked and which songs. I mean, you can't, as a radio person, you're used to having people tune in, tune out, flip the dial, change because of commercials. They'll hear a song they don't like, they don't come back. I get people because, first of all, my show's commercial free. Second, there's a certain flow to the show where once you're in it, time flies, and you can listen for 3 hours and it doesn't seem like it's been 3 hours. And the fact that people do that and stay to the end, again, that makes every minute that I spend during the week worthwhile.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Thank you for doing this and for bringing these people on this journey, introducing people to such amazing music.
Well, again, I like what I do, and I know that there's enough other people that if I could do it for 10 people or 20 people or whatever, 50 people. I mean, fortunately, we're up to about 3,000 people that at least like the Facebook page and tell other people about it. So again, I if I can have something in common with them and we can build kind of our own little music community within ourselves, it's great to be able to expand to a new market like St. Petersburg and Tampa. It's a huge, there's a lot of people that live in South Florida, giving them maybe something they haven't heard before, because there really is a lack of AAA stations in Florida. There are pockets of them around the country, but there's really not much going on down here. And so maybe I turn some people. The hardest thing is getting people back to listening to something that's curated, because they're building their own playlists. A lot of people build their own playlists because they can't find what they're looking for other places.
Totally.
So if I can curate a list for people, make it easier for them that they can tune in, maybe they can pick and choose what they like and build their own list from that. But if I can hear, last week someone said, we listened for 2 hours on our way to Gainesville. I'm like, that's great. You can pick it up in the car. You can pick it up on Amazon with Alexa. There's, again, commercial free is great, because unfortunately the way commercial radio has gotten is, you'll get 14, 15, 16 minutes of commercials an hour. Sometimes instead of like 4 60-second commercials, you'll get 8 30-second commercials, and then you're just being inundated. And I don't have to worry about
it. It's the same advertisers, like within the whole hour, and you're like, oh, I don't want to hear this anymore. I just want to get back to the music.
Yeah. Well, again, everyone's got to pay their bills. I don't have any. Yeah.
That's good to have.
I don't make money at this, but I never really did. I got paid in concert tickets, but in truth, concert tickets nowadays, if I could get paid in concert tickets nowadays, that'd be well worth it.
Oh, I feel exactly the same way. Like, because the thing is, and we need to say this to people that are not in the radio business or don't know about it. You don't get into radio for money. You get into it because you love the art and you love music. But maybe you get like a free T-shirt, or hey, there's this concert Saturday night, you got some tickets. So
I've got a bag of T-shirts that some of them are 30, 40 years old, from different bands and different concerts. I've got a box that is filled. For some reason, when I was just getting started, I saved my concert tickets because it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I've got 40 years of concert tickets. Now, the only downside of that is that once it got to a certain point and my position in radio, a lot of times I was fortunate enough to be on guest lists. And so I don't have a hard ticket to show that I was there. But
like, oh,
it's a good problem. It's a good problem to have. But I do have those tickets, and I bring them out every once in a while because it helps me remember that show. It helps me. It brings back memories of seeing. To me, live music is best. I love doing what I do and playing music, and hopefully people hear something they like and want to go out and see it live. That's the key. That's what I like talking about. Is like, okay, here's something from Amos Lee. By the way, Amos Lee is playing tomorrow down in Orlando, and I'm going to be at that show. And next week, I'll have something to talk about, and so I love people to go to see live shows. I love having those concert tickets to remind me of the shows I went to. It's a shame nowadays you go to a show and you just show them your phone. All the tickets are on the phone. It's like, oh man, it's not the same.
So, okay, we got to go back to the T-shirts that you have. Do you wear them? Are they folded? I need to know what the situation looks like.
anyone can tell you that my shirts are not folded.
Okay.
They've never been they've never been folded. Um, but I do wear them every once in a while. Some of them I've outgrown, and I carry for nostalgic reasons. Some of them I do wear every once in a while, but I wear them so sparingly that's why they still last. Is most of my T-shirts are like this. They're black. Um,
Yeah.
if I want to bust out a classic T-shirt, it'll get play. I've got T-shirts that go back into the 80s and 90s, but I only wear them once a year or something. So if it's a special occasion.
So I guess talking about concerts, you've been to so many, but like, are there any standout concerts for you that you just like you think like, oh my gosh, that was such a great day, or you had a specific moment when you went to this concert?
To be honest, we don't have enough time. Um,
Forever and ever.
there are individual shows that over time have become more and more important. The first Springsteen show I saw was in 1975 up at Laker Hall in Oswego. The first time I saw Springsteen, and that just changed. I became a fan for life. The first Grateful Dead song, or show that I saw was Barton Hall '77, which has gone down in history as a legendary show. What did I know? It was my first Grateful Dead show.
That's so cool.
I've seen almost every rock show that came to the Dome when we were lucky enough to have the Carrier Dome in Syracuse in the early 80s. I mean, everybody, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, Genesis, Springsteen. I mean, you name it. And club shows that I saw that eventually became big bands. I saw the Police in a club. I saw U2 in a club. I saw Bon Jovi in a club.
Well, Police and U2, was that at, I mean, I'm dating myself here, but was that the Country Club, AKA whatever it was before the Country Club?
No, it was City Limits, which is was a bar over on Bridge Street in DeWitt, which is no longer around.
Bridge Street and DeWitt.
But the Police was at Uncle Sam's, which was on Erie Boulevard, which used to be the Country Club. And a lot of shows at the Lost Horizon, a lot of club shows, but so many club shows that those bands eventually became headliners.
Yeah.
And, the Black Crowes, so many bands, I can't even name them all, but some of those concert events, seeing the Stones, and one time at one particular tour, getting a chance to go backstage to the Dome and meeting the Stones, those are the things that you, as a music fan, you can't replace. I mean, being able to interview Genesis backstage at a Genesis show, our recording equipment, our portable equipment didn't work inside the Dome. So I had to take an old cell phone, a little flip phone, and do an interview with Genesis. I called the radio station. They put my phone on the air. I would ask a question and hand the phone to one of the guys in Genesis. They'd talk into the phone and hand it back to me. I mean, things like that you don't forget. And then
is that interview still out there? Like, do you have a recording of that?
That one I don't. I wasn't in the studio to record it, but there were some, like Dave Matthews came into the studio after I introduced him on the second stage at the Horde Festival in '94 with the Allman Brothers and Big Head Todd and the Monsters and Rusted Root. And later about 3 or 4 months later, he came into the studio. They were playing the Landmark Theater, and he came into the studio and played acoustic. So I have the recording of him playing 2 songs acoustic and me interviewing him back in 1994 when we were both much younger, because I had reel-to-reel tape rolling. But I've got Susan Tedeschi did the same thing, came in like 91 or so, or 92, and played live on the air for me. Little did I know that eventually she'd become, I mean, I knew right then, it was just me and her in the room, and the temperature of the room went up 20 degrees. Yeah, I became a big fan. And now Tedeschi Trucks is one of my favorite bands, because Derek Trucks is just a guitar player on another level, and their whole band is tremendous. But again, nobody's playing them.
I know.
You can't find them anywhere on the radio, so they've become one of my staples. There's bands like that are just that have become regulars on my show. But one thing that I try to do is I don't repeat any artist during the show. I never repeat songs. Maybe if even the songs that I like a lot, since the show is weekly, may only get played 3 or 4 times a year.
Wow.
I look back every week when I go to do a show. I look back at least 4 or 5 months to see when the last time I played a song. I don't want I've got so much music to share and for people to hear. I don't want to rely on the same songs, even ones that I like and other people might like. I don't want to. I want to give people a variety. You know.
Yeah, that's important. It's kind of like when you go into a place like Barnes and Nobles, right? And you see all the books on the wall, and I'm just like, but I'm never gonna read all these books. Like there's no time. It's the same thing with music. Like when I mean, there are very few music stores and album stores, but like you think about it, you're like, I don't think I can listen to all this music.
Yeah. No, I mean there are some things that, you know, I really enjoy that other people that like music would like. There was a movie that came out about 10 years ago called I Am What I Play. And it centers around four DJs that came out during the time of freeform progressive FM radio, you know, back when the DJs were picking the music. And it's a fascinating documentary for anyone that loves music. It's called I Am What I Play. And that one really hit home with me. That was the kind of music I grew up with and the kind of person and DJ that I want to be. And things like that are, you know, really made a mark with me. But then again, there were fun things like WKRP in Cincinnati, which, you know, um, anyone that was in radio knows that there's a lot of truth in that show in pieces. You know, there's salespeople like Herb Tarlick, and there's program directors like Andy, and there's certainly DJs like, you know, Johnny Fever, and so, you know, certain things like that I always enjoyed as being part of the business. You know.
Mm-hmm. So now that you're based in Florida, how has this chapter influenced your perspective on life?
Uh, well, I appreciate every day,
Yeah.
every single day. I
Mhm.
mean, first of all, my mom's still here. Thank God, she's 92,
Mhm.
um, and um, it's sunny most of the time. Anyone
Yeah.
that knows that next to my family and music, sunshine is really important to me. And it is just sunny here a lot.
Yeah.
Even when it's hot, even when it's not, it's sunny. And so I appreciate every day. And, you know, and not working 7 days a week has given me the opportunity to let my mind unwind and not be fixated on all the details all the time, and just being able to be a little bit more creative when it comes to putting my show together. So maybe that answers your question. I don't know.
And I'm happy that you went to Florida because if you guys watching know anything about Syracuse, if you're from Syracuse, Syracuse is always very dark, cold, and gloomy. So you go from just overcast weather to sunshine every day.
I, you know, all I can say is possibly that meteorological experience has created such a vibrant music scene because people need something to escape from it. I'm telling you, I am the one thing I miss more than anything being down here. I mean, outside of my family that live up in New York, is my friends and musician friends of mine that I am big fans of. I think that the Syracuse music scene is as good as anywhere. And that's why I was so proud to be a member of the Sammys for as long as I have been, and even more than that, being able to go out and see bands, world class bands, on a regular basis. I miss that more than anything, really.
Yeah. And who are some of your musician friends up in Syracuse that you love personally as well as musically? I mean,
Um,
I know.
I can't do it without leaving people out. Um,
Oh, you're gonna leave someone out. Someone's gonna get upset.
you know, I mean, there's musicians that have been around for 50 years that, you know, people like Mark Doyle and people like, you know, the Flash Cubes and Ed Hamill with the Works and you know, then the guys like Los Blancos and Joe Whiting and Mark Doyle. There's so many. I can't even, again, I don't want to keep, I could keep going. I could
Yeah.
keep, and I find a way to work their music into my show every week. Now, one thing that we did when I got to the Rebel was every hour of every day, even on the classic rock station that we were on, we would play one local band from Syracuse because there are so many kinds of music being made there that they can find a way to weave into something else that I'm playing.
Mhm.
And they deserve to be on a big stage. And again, I've got so many people that I continue to follow that continue to make music up there, good music, that I can't even list them all.
Yeah, there's so many. So my final question, being inducted into the Syracuse Area Music Hall of Fame and receiving the Sammy Lifetime Achievement Award are massive honors. So what do these recognitions mean to you both personally as well as professionally?
Well, I mean, professionally, it justifies what I've been able to do. Personally, it means even more than that because I'm just such a music fan. I'm a
Mhm.
fan of fans. It doesn't. I don't get anything out of it. Otherwise, I don't. I'm just a music fan, and I appreciate what they do. And if I can let other people know what they do, if I can spread the word about them and promote them, and then somehow get credit for that, I owe it all to the musicians that made me, gave me the reputation that I might have. If it wasn't for the amount of music that came out of Syracuse and the quality of musicianship,
Mhm.
been able to put together a show that was on 4 different radio stations over the course of over 40 years. So that it means a lot on both levels.
Okay. So I just want to look at some of these comments because there's people in here. So I just want to shout a couple people out. Buffalo Sky says, like that Stevie Ray pick, Dave.
Which one?
Rebecca says hi. Al says, I'm enjoying this, Dave.
Good.
Rebel Vinyl. Who else is in here? Deadhead Daryl says, get the dead out.
I love is one of my. I mean, if everybody could have somebody that was an ambassador for themselves, like Daryl is for me, every Sunday he posts something on Facebook that it would take me hours to come up with, and I mean, it is the most flattering prelude to my show every week. What he puts together, I love it.
Amazing. And so did you meet Daryl like did Daryl find the show or are you friends or how did that relationship come
Yeah,
about?
he was a fan of the show, and we've met numerous times since. Uh,
Cool.
we share well, a lot of music, a lot of different kinds of music, but especially the Grateful Dead. Like I said,
Okay.
show. So my first Dead show was Barton Hall '77. So they had an anniversary show a couple of years ago, and Daryl was able to go to that show, and he got a commemorative T-shirt for me and sent it to me to commemorate that I went to the original one. So that's how.
That's a friend. Wow. So how many times have you seen the Dead?
Who? Daryl?
No, you.
How many have you seen the Dead?
Yeah, the Grateful Dead.
Uh, a real Deadhead doesn't know. I mean, I don't.
You watch.
Uh, I Well, first of all, there was the Grateful Dead with Jerry, which I was able to see numerous times.
Yeah.
There was Jerry Garcia Band, which I was able to see numerous times.
Mm-hmm.
There was Rat Dog, and I've seen numerous times. Dead and Company, the other ones. There's so many variations of the Grateful Dead, so I'd say it's dozens.
At least over 50?
I don't know if it's 50. I'm not to tell you the truth.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't keep track to tell you the truth. Um, like I said, concert tickets I can kind of get an idea of
Yeah.
but I haven't been. But there's a lot of shows that I went to that I never got concert tickets for.
Right, because you just
Some
like
shows, for example, some shows I know that, like I have my ticket for Prince at the Carrier Dome. It was one of 2 times that I saw him on that tour, and I'll
Mhm.
never forget it. I only saw David Bowie once, I think, at the
Mm,
Carrier. There's some shows that I only saw once.
yeah.
So those I remember. How many times I've seen some of my favorite bands, Springsteen, The Dead, the Allman Brothers, Little Feat. I've seen them so many times I've forgotten how many times I've seen them.
So
Uh,
many.
it's becoming that way with Tedeschi Trucks too. But then there's shows that you never forget, like Woodstock '94 and Woodstock '99, which I went to as a member of a radio station, so I was reporting on them as I was also seeing them.
Yeah.
So those are just cultural events that I wouldn't, you know.
What do you remember most of 94 and 99 Woodstock? Like, was there anybody that stood out to you, or like somebody you were like, oh my gosh, like I loved seeing this person perform?
Yeah, well, 94 had a lot of my favorite bands. The Allman Brothers, Peter Gabriel, Crosby, Stills and Nash, just so many bands. Steve Winwood with Traffic. I remember seeing Santana on the South Stage. It was just a muddy weekend, and it was raining constantly. And when Jimi Hendrix or Carlos Santana came out and started playing, The Sun came out.
Mm.
I remember that. But yeah, it was just going back and forth from stage to stage, and the amount of people that were there, and catching music when you could. Just a huge amount of people there, and it was an organic festival for all of its pluses and minuses. It was a muddy mess, but '99 was not nearly as much fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was hot. It was on a tarmac of an Air Force base. The bands were much more intense.
Right.
They were a lot heavier. They didn't have that kind of spirit that the '69 had, or '94 for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I remember some of the bands real well. I remember the last night better than anything, which is unfortunate. I still have a lot of pictures from that event, and some pretty vivid memories of broadcasting from there. But I enjoyed '94 more than '99.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And have you ever been to the MSG Sphere in Las Vegas?
Here's a funny thing for you. I haven't been there yet. My wife has been there before me.
Who'd she see there?
She was there for the opening weekend of U2.
And why were you not there?
She went with, it was a girls' trip to Vegas. And that sounds like a movie already.
I mean, yes.
But she got to see U2 in
Wow.
Vegas on the Sphere. Now, I did see U2 in a club, and I've seen them outdoors, indoors. I've seen them again probably 6 or 7 times, but she saw him in a Sphere first. And we do have a poster in my room here of, she did bring me back a poster. So there is that.
I feel like, because when you were saying like Dead Company, and I was like, oh yeah, they like, I was thinking in my head like, oh yeah, they were at the Sphere, and I haven't been to the Sphere yet, but it's definitely on my bucket list. Like, even if there's not a show I attend, just to be in there. I think they show like planetarium movies or something like that when they don't have concerts, but it's just the photos and the videos that I've seen have just it looks insane. Like, well, what did she say about it?
She was just overwhelmed. She just shot pictures and videos and was just stunned by it. U2 is one of her favorite bands. That was, I mean, I'm glad that she was able to see that, and I was able to kind of get a little bit of that through her eyes. But it was, yeah, that was pretty amazing. I mean, the one other thing that I was able to see was I did see a U2 exhibit at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when I went early on, when they were promoting, when it first opened up. They were promoting it by having radio stations in different areas do their shows live on the air from the museum and bring some listeners along to go through the museum.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple of listeners win the opportunity to join me, and we flew to Cleveland. We went to the museum. We got a private tour of it, and then I was able to do my midday show in their studios during the day. So I was like a living exhibit for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. With a little scroller across having my name, Dave Frisina, Syracuse, which, so people would be tapping on the glass, like, I don't know, it was like being in a zoo a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was a very fun experience.
Oh, wow. Well, I feel like you got to go to you have to go to the Sphere. I don't know who's playing right now. I know that Dead and Company was there. I think the Eagles, I don't think they're playing there anymore. I think they did. But I definitely feel like it's just like, it's something you have to experience in person. Like I need to plan my trip out there for something. So
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things you got to go to.
Definitely. Well, Dave, that's all the questions that I have for this evening, but I'm so very grateful for your time, the stories. I feel like we could literally do this for another 5 hours, but you got to come back. I feel like we only touched the surface on some of these stories, and thank you so much for joining me. Guys, if you are new here, I'm Ashley Live. This is Vibin with Ashley Live. Hit that like and subscribe button. Follow Dave. Dave, any final words for the room? Plug anything you got going on.
Well, I mean, if people go to soulshineradio.com, that'll take you to links to my page and all the links to the shows and where to find them on what platforms. Again, it's soulshineradio.com. And, hopefully from there, you'll find something you like. Again, that's primarily where I'm putting my time and effort into now. Next time we'll get to some more of the show and tell stuff that I have here. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show and in front of more people and more people that like music. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Of course. Have a great night, guys. Thank you so much, Dave. You can come on my show anytime. And yeah, thing where you just like show certain things and tell a story. I'm totally fine with that.
All righty. Sounds good.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.